On the 5th day of November, during an international press conference, Israeli Defense Forces (IDF) spokesperson General Daniel Haqqari presented evidence indicating that Israel had discovered a network of underground tunnels used by Hamas for central command and missile launch sites, located either beneath or in close proximity to several hospitals in the northern Gaza Strip. General Haqqari showcased video footage showing militants emerging from these tunnels near the entrance of Shifa Hospital, funded by Qatar, in Gaza. Others were seen firing from the same location towards Israeli forces. General Haqqari also presented video clips revealing an underground entrance from Shifa Hospital, which he claimed connected to a network of tunnels spanning hundreds of kilometers beneath the Palestinian territories. He further alleged that these hospitals were being used by Hamas to conceal a command and control center. During the press conference, General Haqqari stated, "We will provide evidence that these hospitals have been used by Hamas to hide a command and control center." He also pointed out specific satellite imagery of Shifa Hospital from the 7th of October, which magnified a section of the image approximately 75 to 80 kilometers from the hospital. General Haqqari indicated the location of rocket launchers and emphasized, "I assert that this is where Hamas fires rockets into Israel, which is only approximately 75 kilometers from the hospital." Regarding how they know this information precisely, General Haqqari suggested that if Israel did not strike these launch sites, then the hospitals nearby would be affected. In an unannounced press briefing with international media, General Haqqari claimed that the main operational base for the Hamas Islamist movement was at Shifa Hospital in the city of Gaza. General Haqqari further alleged that Hamas has an extensive underground complex beneath Shifa Hospital, the largest hospital in Gaza, which Hamas leaders use to direct attacks against Israel. Hamas denies using hospitals for combat purposes and accuses Israel of spreading falsehoods. Israel maintains that its targets are Hamas combatants and assets. But critics argue that Israel's attacks are disproportionate given the large number of civilian casualties. According to the United Nations, since the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas conflict on the 7th of October, 1.5 million out of 2.3 million people in Gaza have been displaced. Israel continues to issue warnings and evacuation calls to Gaza residents. In a surprising and unannounced visit to Iraq on the 5th of November, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made an important stop on his short Middle East tour. Blinken's visit to Iraq was not pre-announced due to security concerns. This marked his first visit to the country as the U.S. Secretary of State. Blinken arrived at Baghdad International Airport wearing a bulletproof vest and was transported by Black Hawk helicopter to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad's Green Zone. He was briefed on security threats, and he met with Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Aoun. Both discussed the escalating Israel-Hamas conflict. Blinken stated that the U.S. is making efforts to secure a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza to address urgent priorities, such as providing more aid and securing the release of Hamas-held hostages. After his unannounced visit to Baghdad, Blinken traveled to Ankara, Turkey to hold talks with his Turkish counterpart, Hakan Fidan. His visit to Turkey was met with protests, as people demonstrated against his visit amidst the ongoing Israel-Hamas crisis. The Israel-Hamas conflict continues to escalate, with both sides intensifying their attacks. On the 5th of November, the Ukrainian Chief of General Staff, Valery Zaluzhny, reported that Russia carried out numerous attacks against Ukraine. He noted that the Russian forces had initiated a series of offensives, targeting various cities and areas, including the cities of Kharkiv, Mariupol, and Marinka, all in Donetsk province, as well as the city of Zarya. The situation on the eastern and southern fronts in Ukraine remained difficult, with 44 combat engagements reported in recent days. Ukraine reported 1,039 artillery shells fired by Russia, causing significant casualties and material damage. General Alexander Tansyura, the commander of the Strategic Operational Command of Ukraine, indicated that Russian troops conducted 8 airstrikes, 56 offensive actions, and fired 42 combat engagements, resulting in 826 rounds fired with multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, on the front lines. Additionally, Russia launched 2 missile strikes, carried out 34 airstrikes, and fired 36 MLRS salvos into Ukrainian positions and civilian settlements. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian Air Force revealed that Russia had deployed 5 groups of UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, for offensive actions against Ukraine. These UAVs approached Ukraine from various directions. The first group moved towards the northwest, along the border with Ukraine and Moldova, while the second group was detected in the north of Odessa province. 3 more groups approached Odessa from the Black Sea. Ukrainian air defenses reported taking down 4 Russian reconnaissance UAVs. The Israel-Hamas conflict has led to significant financial costs, with estimates suggesting that the conflict could lead to Israel spending up to 200 billion shekels, equivalent to 51 billion US dollars. This financial burden is calculated based on the assumption of a conflict lasting 8 to 12 months, limited to Gaza, and without external involvement. This estimate does not include the potential long-term economic consequences. Israel will likely spend approximately 10 billion shekels a day on defense operations. The conflict could result in Israel losing around 40 to 60 billion shekels in revenue and incurring 17 to 20 billion shekels in expenses for business losses and reconstruction. The Israeli Ministry of Finance announced that the government is preparing a substantial economic support package for those affected by the conflict, which is expected to be larger and more extensive than the COVID-19 relief package. On the 2nd of November, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised government support for all those affected by the conflict. However, he did not specify a specific figure. Tensions in the Israel-Hamas conflict have escalated on various fronts, and both sides have intensified their attacks. The situation remains volatile, with significant financial and humanitarian consequences. Ukrainian rocket units hit 3 artillery systems and 4 troop clusters, the opponent's military equipment, in the recent developments. On the same day, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky bypassed the General Staff's chief of the armed forces, Valery Zhalut, who claimed that the conflict was entering a stalemate. On November 1st, Zhalut openly assessed that the war had moved into a war of attrition, and that unless either side made a technological breakthrough, the conflict would fall into a stalemate. Zhalut also acknowledged that Russia was gradually gaining the upper hand due to its numerical superiority, recognizing that the protracted conflict had placed Ukraine in a disadvantageous position. However, President Zelensky denied that the war was heading into a stalemate and stated that Ukraine needed to work more with Western allies to strengthen air defense. He acknowledged the difficulties in the ongoing war and the lack of major successes in the counteroffensive campaign. Still, Zelensky emphasized that the Ukrainian military had no choice but to continue fighting and needed further support from Western allies. Deputy head of the Presidential Office of Ukraine, Igor Jaskova, also criticized Zhalut's views, warning that such assessments could be used against Ukraine. High-ranking Russian officials believe that the West has been shocked and surprised by Moscow's resilience in the face of thousands of sanctions from the US and its allies over the past 2 years. On November 4th, the Kremlin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, announced that Russia's economy had stabilized beyond expectations despite facing a series of Western sanctions. He emphasized that Russia had achieved genuine economic sovereignty, the ability to pursue independent policies, and protect national interests from external pressures. He stated that the West was surprised that Russia had stood firm against unprecedented economic sanctions, even though the country had previously been warned of impending disasters in the 1990s. Peskov also referred to forecasts made in April, which predicted Russia's GDP growth at only 1.2%. He highlighted that despite extremely challenging conditions over the past year and 9 months of unprecedented sanctions, the government had not only been working to stabilize the situation, but it also adjusted the economic development, increasing GDP growth to 2.8%. He credited this achievement to detailed and meticulous work by the country's financial and economic management agencies. The Kremlin spokesperson also mentioned various initiatives put forward in recent months to support the economy, from capital control to promoting the use of the national currency in trade. In 1992, Russia experienced its first hyperinflation period, with inflation rates reaching 2,000% following the Soviet Union's collapse. In 1998, Moscow endured the technical default crisis, considered the worst economic meltdown in the country's history. When the Russia-Ukraine conflict occurred, the US and its allies imposed unprecedented economic sanctions on Moscow, primarily targeting the financial, aviation, and space industries. Some Russian banks had to leave the international SWIFT network, while many foreign companies in various sectors left the country in 2022. Russia's GDP decreased by 2.1% under the impact of these sanctions. However, as of October this year, according to President Vladimir Putin, Russia had fully recovered from this recession. Western financial institutions have also noted Russia's economic recovery. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, adjusted its GDP growth forecast for Russia twice this year. Currently, the IMF predicts Russia's GDP will grow by 2.2% in 2023, a substantial increase from the April estimate of 0.7% and the July estimate of 1.5%. Sweden officially confirmed the transfer of 8 Archer self-propelled howitzers to Ukraine. Sweden's defense minister Peter Hultqvist announced that Ukraine's armed forces had received 8 Archer-wheeled self-propelled howitzers from Sweden. According to Johnson, providing Archer self-propelled howitzers is essential for the Ukrainian military, as these systems are highly mobile and accurate. It is known that the self-propelled howitzers supplied by Sweden have been incorporated into the arsenal of the Ukrainian Armed Forces 45th Artillery Brigade. Recent images showed that this type of wheeled self-propelled howitzer was present and in combat operation earlier this year. The Swedish government decided to transfer the Archer self-propelled howitzers to Ukraine as part of a military assistance package for the Joint Forces operation. The Archer Artillery Control System, Archer ACS, is a Swedish 155 mm self-propelled howitzer developed by BAE Systems Bofors. Providing this equipment to the Ukrainian Armed Forces began only in 2013. The Archer ACS has a weight of 30 tons and uses a 155 mm main gun with a maximum firing range of 30 kilometers, or 40 kilometers with extended range ammunition. Archer can fire both standard and extended range munitions. Furthermore, Archer can fire guided anti-tank projectiles. Archer has an automated loading system with a high rate of fire. It can continuously fire 75 rounds in an hour, with a firing rate of about 8 to 9 rounds per minute. It has a ready-to-fire load of 20 rounds. The time needed for reloading is about 8 minutes. The artillery system is mounted on the modified chassis of a Volvo A30D truck. The system can reach a maximum road speed of 70 kilometers per h and has an operational range of 500 kilometers. The fighting compartment and the vehicle's engine are protected by armored covers. In addition, the cabin is protected from small arms fire and shell splinters. According to an estimate by the Italian Civil Protection Agency, extreme weather this year caused devastation in urban areas and agriculture, resulting in billions of euros in damages. On November 4th, Sputnik 24-hour reported that Italy's largest insurance companies had to deal with compensation payments exceeding 3 billion euros due to floods and storms in the Veneto and Emilia-Romagna regions earlier this year. The Italian government allocated approximately 5 million euros in aid, with a commitment to provide even more support. Italian authorities say that the current extreme weather phenomenon in Tuscany is linked to a heat wave trend, according to Coldiretti, Italy's agricultural association. Flooding occurred immediately after the hottest October on record in the country. The estimated damage caused by floods to the agricultural sector in Italy is over 6 billion euros this year. The damage is not only related to crop losses and the quantity of cereals and olive oil production, but also includes stocks of agricultural products in flooded warehouses in Tuscany and central Italy. Tuscany is still under a weather warning due to extreme weather conditions. Tuscan Region President Eugenio Gianni has adjusted damage estimates to over 500 million euros due to adverse weather and flooding. Previously, the damage was estimated at 250 to 300 million euros. The exact total damage estimate is expected to be announced in the coming days, but the impact of extreme weather on major insurance companies has already been significant. On November 1st, Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong announced that he would be handing over leadership to Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee-keat before the upcoming general elections, set for November 2024. Speaking at the annual convention of the People's Action Party, PAP, he stated that if all goes well, he would hand over leadership to Heng before the 70th anniversary of the party, which falls on November 21st, 2024. He added, "Lawrence has told me he is ready, and I have every confidence in him, so there is no reason to delay the transfer." The important decision left to be made is whether the leadership handover will occur before or after the next general elections. If Lawrence Wong takes over before the elections, it means he will lead the 4G leadership team in the upcoming campaign and claim a mandate for himself and the 4G leadership team. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong mentioned that all cabinet ministers in the inner circle had supported Wong's appointment as the next leader. He also confirmed that he was willing to take on any role given to him and believed he could serve. He stated, "I am ready to do what Lawrence and his team need me to do, to support them and to ensure they win the next general election. Lawrence has my full support, and I have no doubt he can lead Singapore in the future." Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong is the eldest son of former Singapore Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. He has served as Prime Minister since 2004 and is also the leader of the PAP. Last year, Lee Hsien Loong declared that Finance Minister Heng Swee-keat would be his successor. Subsequently, Heng was appointed as Deputy Prime Minister. Heng has previously held several key positions in various ministries, including Minister for Culture, Community and Youth, Minister of Finance, Minister for Economic Development, and Minister for Education. In addition, he served as the Secretary to the Prime Minister during 2005 to 2007.